Thank you for listening to the Divine Nobodies podcast with Eric Ajna and Jennifer Lynn. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe so you never miss a show. If you're on Instagram, please follow us at Divine Nobodies Podcast and join our ever-growing community of lightworkers and spiritual visionaries. Together, we can raise the frequency of our planet and bring in a new era of awakening and understanding. Welcome to our tribe. And now your hosts, Eric Ajna and Jennifer Lynn.
Oh, hello. Hello. Thank you for tuning in to Divine Nobodies podcast. How you doing, Jen?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. Actually, I found out something really interesting this week. I just wanted to share it before we get into this really amazing interview we're about to go on to. But do you know what the word Subaru means?
I don't know.
Well, I'm going to tell you. You're going to
Okay.
find out today, and then you can
Okay.
take it and just share it with your tribe because it's really interesting. Because I went through my entire life seeing this emblem on the back of cars. I had no idea what it was.
Okay.
It says Subaru is the Japanese word for Pleiades.
Get out of here, really?
And the company logo, an oval with 6 4-point stars, represents the Pleiades star cluster. The word also means united because the Subaru Corporation was formed by the merger of 5 companies. Isn't that crazy?
That is awesome.
Yeah. So next time you see a
Wow.
Subaru, take another look at the person driving.
Well, I've
Might
noticed,
be a Pleiadian.
I have noticed that the people driving Subarus all have a lot in common. I don't
That's
know if
true.
you've ever noticed that.
I have.
Outdoorsy. Yeah.
Yeah, super outdoorsy. I had a friend named Jameson, and he took to the van life, just
Oh,
like
yeah.
that. And he went off into the sunset in a Subaru.
Oh,
You know.
well, there you go.
Yeah, so the aliens are among us. They may not look exactly the way that you think, but they're there.
Yeah.
And if you want to know what they look like, try and find somebody driving a Subaru. Anyways, we got a lot of stuff to cover today. We have a really amazing guest in the studio. I'm going to go ahead and introduce her here. She's an energy worker that's been working in the field of healing for 18 plus years. She's designed versatile sessions for people and animals that are a combination of Reiki, intuitive clearing, muscle testing, and kinesiology. She works closely with her clients' needs, and these flexible sessions are designed to be calming, active in their healing capacities, and informative. For disturbances or imbalances in the home, she's a home clearer. We're going to talk about that. She does a lot of space clearing and is focused on energetically organizing and cleansing environments to help energy run more smoothly. I was talking to Jen about this before the podcast. Even the crows in nature know her by name. When they see her, they go, Heather McCall, McCall, McCall. You like that? Welcome, Heather. This is Heather McCall.
Thank you very much. I wish I had that as like a wake-up alarm. Wouldn't that be cool? Heather McCall, McCall, McCall. It's time to get up, get up, get up, get up.
Yeah, I've been in nature several times, like on camping trips or even at home, and I hear them outside. They must think that you live here because they're always saying, McCall, McCall, McCall. And I gotta be like, that's the wrong house. You're in the wrong house. You're in the wrong house, guys.
Same city, wrong house.
That's just your
Exactly.
magic. You're just hearing their magic, Eric.
Yeah. So thank you so much for coming. You've been a sort of kindred spirit in Jen's life for a long time, and Jen's told me a lot about you because you guys have worked together when it came to some of the spiritual activity that she's had in her home. And we wanted to kind of pick your brain on a few things when it came to energy clearing as well as animal communication, because you communicate with the animals too, right?
That's right. Yes, that's right. That's how I started. It isn't actually how I started, but it's how I was rethrown back into healing work because I was very adverse to the idea of being an energy worker, and I did as much as I could to stay away from this. You know, I come from a very artistic, intellectual family, and it was just too grueling to think I was going to be one of those airy-fairy types, you know.
Yeah.
So I ended up volunteering on a farm for a month, and that's when I really got my initiation fully into animal communication.
Yeah. And how does that work?
Yeah.
Like, how does that work when you're in the farm, right? And you're with all these different animals? How does that come into be so young? I'm not sure what age that you were at, but when did you kind of get that vibe that animals were trying to communicate with you?
Well, I think I've always been, can you hear me? Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. I've always been very in touch with animals clearly, and been able to feel their energy system in a very, very clear way ever since I was a kid. And so, there was this very sick animal, and my boss basically said, will you come over and help the cat? He'd been knocked over by a car. He was blind as well. And I was like, why are you asking me to do that? And she said, I just know you can do it. And I really thought she was crazy, but she really pushed on it. So I went over, and his name was Riley, and the cat started speaking to me almost immediately. And so it was kind of an instant thing for me. He was really a major, major teacher for me, Riley was, and an initiator. And you just never know when these things are going to come through and what kind of animal's going to open you up that way. And so there was no denying it. Yeah.
So what does that sound like? I mean, do you hear like a voice in your head, or is this just a knowing? Oh, okay.
It's actually both. It's just a very clear, how do you explain it? It's difficult to explain. It has a certain energetic to it that's not your own. And I felt it. I continue to feel it head to toe, energy wise. So that's how I know that's one of my clues that I'm on track, that I'm actually picking up something that isn't mine, is that energetically, my whole body, my whole system feels it. So that's different than my friend coming over for a cup of tea and chatting about whatever, her boyfriend.
Yeah, and that totally makes sense. It's like a difference between like linguistics, language, and energy. I think energy explains it perfectly because animals obviously don't speak English. So a lot of what I hear or read in a lot of these books is that, you have to sort of drop that in the same way that I imagine like people that are psychic have to drop their ideas of how that information comes into your mind. One thing that I do know at the most practical level with my animal is that a lot of my communication with her has to do with like behavioral, like movement and motion. And I guess that can be considered energy, right?
Absolutely. That's right, Eric. I mean, I think for years, there's been this idea that animals can only be communicated with through images. And I actually think that it's not the case. I think they actually understand more verbally than we give them credit for. And they do well with images too, but movement is a great example of how they're going to read us, because as we're moving energy, and that's what they see and they feel.
Yeah, it makes sense, because it's like I imagine animals don't maybe, and I could be wrong, but because they're so present, that movement and that motion makes so much sense. Like I remember when I first got my cat, from the very beginning, before I had a cat, I was like, I have no idea what this cat thinks, what it is that it does. And 15, 20 years later, I know everything about this cat just based off of the sounds that it makes, like the frequency of her voice,
absolutely,
and the way that she moves.
Yes.
And that sort of nonverbal form of communication, I think, is so powerful. And it's been a really great teacher for me, just in almost like a form of meditation in a ways,
Absolutely. That's true. And that's part of the gift of our communication with animals, And luckily you're embodied enough that you can slow down and hear what she's saying. Is it she? She's saying.
Yes.
And so, you've got a great communicator there.
Yeah, she's incredible. She's an incredible cat. I would imagine it's really similar to kind of mediumship, because anytime I'm connecting to spirit, I can feel like you kind of feel like you're on an elevator and you get chills all over and your hair kind of stands up, like you just kind of feel like a little dizzy almost. Is that how it comes through for you? Or is it similar? Or
yes, it's partly that for sure. And then also just it's like, it's not me if the tone that it's generating is totally not me, for example, or it's a really hard thing to describe, but the energetic elevator metaphor that you're using is really good. It's like if you heard somebody else's voice in your head, here we go down the crazy track, but if you did, you'd know it's not you. It sounds completely different. It's really just like that.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah. Why is it that you think, and I mean, I've tried to, I was vegetarian, vegan for a long time. And the one thing that when we were talking about energetics, that was a really, really large piece of time where I feel like that really made a difference. Because when I was vegetarian and vegan for, 8 to almost 10 years, I noticed that there was a significant difference in how animals behaved around me.
Oh, yes. And especially, as we were saying before we began the interview, you have this enormous connection to animals, Eric, and so I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised about that information at all. Unfortunately, I eat meat, and so there's like a really interesting dilemma that I'm in with that, because I have to do a lot of clearing before I eat meat and all of that stuff. I just, but yeah, it's an interesting thing that.
Yeah. And when I'm in nature and I'm with a lot of these different animals, and it's not even just cats, it's dogs, I try and tap into that sort of woo-woo part of myself where it's like I get into every animal and I'd be like, I want to talk to you. So I feel like there's that energy in there that's like, oh, I can make this happen. And also like maybe gently say something to them and see what happens. But I've noticed that all animals are different. Why is it that there are animals that are more sentient, right? So you have things like animals like elephants, dolphins, these are really intelligent animals that more or less kind of communicate with language. But then you have maybe animals that are a little bit more practical like cats and dogs. So I imagine the energetics of that are a little different. How do you think that that's different? And how sentient animals communicate in opposed to just, regular domesticated animals?
That's a really good question. I'm not sure I know how to explain that really. I think it's just like if you were sitting in front of the Dalai Lama, you would be picking up on a field that's different than the greengrocer down the road. You know what I mean? So it has to do with advancement in a certain realm there.
Yeah. The one thing that I notice for me, like when it comes to that, is I'm wondering if like that sort of fundamental frequency that brings us together, us and animals, is maybe like love.
Well, for sure. I mean, there are major teachers for love, right? I mean, and heart opening. They absolutely are. And
we did a full episode on that, because I came to you about Sancho, my dog, who is very old, and he stopped walking. So he wasn't really eating, and he didn't walk for a couple weeks. And I was like, okay, he's 17. It's probably time. So, but I wasn't comfortable with putting him to sleep. I was really struggling with, is euthanasia an act of kindness, or am I doing something that he's not ready for? Am I supposed to be just letting him go about his natural process? So what are your thoughts on euthanasia with animals?
So again, a tricky question. I'm a fan of trying to allow the animals to pass on their own accord. But I understand as human beings, this is very, very hard and difficult to handle. Cats have a way of really, cats really want to insist upon this. There's something about how they are in this world, that their ability to take themselves off to, dogs do this too, but animals are really good at handling a large amount of pain, and they do it in a way that we're not good at handling at all. Our central nervous systems aren't built for it. They're very surrendered to it. They manage it internally. It's a human problem, not an animal problem.
Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting because we were talking about it in front of him, and I was asking him, I was like, buddy, just tell me what you want me to do. I don't know what you want me to do. And when we were like, okay, we're guessing it's time. He's not walking. We have to hold him up whenever he goes to the bathroom. He can't even sit up on his own. And then I spoke to you, And the next day he started walking. And I'm like, what the hell is going on?
He started walking, Jen?
He started walking.
What?
And I was like,
oh my gosh.
And Heather said, well, he knows that you're going to carry him around. So part of this, because he's my baby, like part of it is he just knows you'll do it. And I was like, that little shit.
That's shocking to me because we did an entire episode on like how to go about the Sancho situation. The name of the episode was The Epic Saga of Sancho the Dog. And that whole episode was about, okay, well, what should we do is if the animal is suffering, should we put it down? And there was just I imagine just intuition that there was some reluctance there, obviously, because it's your animal. But I didn't know. I just found out right now that he made a full turnaround.
Day. Yeah.
This dog has conquered death like 50 times. Just FYI.
And you can feel how young he is.
In spirit, yeah.
Yes, in spirit. That's right.
And everyone always comments on that, on how young he looks, like for his age. And he has aged very gracefully. I mean, his cataracts aren't that bad. His fur, I mean, he's gray. He used to be brown, but he's gray now. But outside of that.
So when the spirit aspect starts to feel like it's in trouble, then you're entered into a different phase.
Okay. Interesting.
He reminds me of that like that uncle that's like 90 years old and he's walking around with a cigarette and like some whiskey and he's like, hey, you're sick? All you got to do is just take a shot of this stuff and you'll be good. You know what I mean? He's got that vibe. And his name's Sancho. That's something a Sancho would do.
Right. Exactly. What's your problem?
Yeah, he's too funny. And it was really interesting. Just the whole reading with you was really, really interesting because it's things that I had so many questions and he was just so chatty and just coming through and telling you everything. I was like, this is great. So I can't thank you enough for saving his life. I mean, he probably wouldn't be alive right now if it wasn't for that. But who knows? I mean, I don't know. I was really struggling with it. I probably would have just kept him around as long as I could.
Right.
And would you say that, I mean, at least from what I've read and just what I've gathered from my own animal is that, they're on this earth, and Jen brought this up in one of our last episodes, which is like, they've already mastered unconditional love, like they're always using that as sort of a baseline of how they operate because they're not, concerned with a lot of the craziness that we human beings are concerned with. They live a very simple life. For the most part, they live the life of like a wandering ascetic. You might as well call them Buddha because they're perfectly content with being who they are. You know what I mean? And I'm wondering if maybe these animals came into my life, Jen's life, in order to teach us really important lessons on love, because I imagine Jen, through that episode, she was falling apart. She's going through a lot of different emotions, and to try and hold space for that, I completely understood what pain she was going through, and vice versa, because I shared the pain that I was going through with my cat. And both of these animals ended up recovering and getting better. And yes, that's a good thing. But, the one thing that I do know is that I learned a lot about myself and reactivity to just even the concept of death. Through that whole process, it makes you come to terms with your own sort of mortality in ways.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. And one of the practices that I try to help animal owners with, because it's very hard if you really love your animal, it can be overwhelming to feel that they're in pain and how to deal with that and to stay in your own energy field, because energy is something that, if you're empathic, you're picking up on the animal stuff, and the animal, by the way, is also picking up on your stuff. And we never talk about clearing animals, but that's one thing that I really try and help animals owners know, that a simple clearing technique is very important because they're walking around with our stuff. But what I was going to say actually was that when we're overwhelmed and our animal is in pain, it's really important you don't have to be an energy worker to do this, but to just take your hand, take a nice deep breath, and put your hand on your animal and try and find a place in the animal's energy system where you click into understanding that they're okay, right? And even if they're in pain. Now, if they're close to death, this is another situation. If they've been knocked over by a car, that's something else. I'm just talking generally about aging animals, right? Because I had a client the other day who was very, very anxious about her dog, and she kept saying, the dog's getting old. The dog was 7 years old, right? And the dog was absolutely fine.
Yeah.
So click into your dog's energy field and have a read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
The one thing that I learned through that whole process was that cats, like you said earlier, they're phenomenal at dealing with various levels of pain. I mean, my cat was in pain for, I imagine, some time, and I would have never, ever guessed, unless I had some sort of energetic sort of like connection to the animal, which I was able to pick up on that, so it's crazy how resilient they are, and what you were talking about when it came to animals having, I believe that, and this is something that I've read, and you can validate that there's almost like this neural network that all of these animals share, or maybe even certain breeds of animals, like wolves, for example. Like, they all communicate in this sort of telepathic way. I imagine that energy has a lot to do with that. And also, and I think that's my cat. Do you hear my cat? Yeah, she knows that I'm talking about her. She's like,
that's right.
Yeah. But they have this sort of like neural network that they have in their whole little tribe. And I imagine how they communicate. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's right.
And I went down a whole rabbit hole of YouTube videos trying to decide what I was going to do with Sancho, right? And weighing in on how I felt about euthanasia. And, I wasn't even sure really where I stood on that. So when an animal is going through like their dying process, is it something that they plan? Do they plan how they're going to die as an additional lesson to teach you?
Well, I don't think it has anything to do with us. I think it's, just like everyone decides, every human decides when their transition point is going to be. And it has nothing to do with anyone else. But I think the animals are pretty much the same. They pick up very, very early on that something, that they pick up earlier than we do, that something's off in their bodies and their energy fields. And I think they they just read it differently. They have some ability to be present with that journey in a way that we find it hard.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking about this the other day about racehorses. And have you ever talked to a racehorse, and do they like what they're doing, or do they feel like prisoners? And is it dependent on the animal?
Well, yes, I'm not clear. I haven't actually spoken to a racehorse, but I imagine if I'm looking at that they'd rather be free, honestly. And I think they're shot full of God knows what, and it's hard, that
the hormones and everything
I would agree with that. I knew a woman a while back, and her name was Lola, and she actually raced horses for a long time. She's relatively young. She's like about my age. And her story was how she got into the spiritual community was that she was racing, and animal, especially horses, they're very loyal. That's the one thing that you hear about horses. They're super loyal. You can actually race them to death if you're not careful. And that's exactly what she did. She was on a track, and she raced this horse, and this horse had a heart attack, and she overgauged its energy, and this animal just collapsed like on the track while she was racing. And she held a lot of guilt and a lot of shame for a long time about, pushing the animal in this way. And it became the greatest catalyst for change for her. But that just shows like how loyal these animals are, like horses.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's right. To the end.
And that was one of the reasons why I reached out to you the first time to do the clearing in my home, was because my animals were being attacked. I don't know if you remember this, because it was a couple years ago now. I mean, it's kind of crazy, but how fast time has flown. But we were at my in-laws' house for Thanksgiving, and we had a Ring camera set up in the downstairs of our home so we could watch the dogs while we were gone. And they had a dog door so they would go in and out of the backyard as they chose. And you could see the orbs flying around, and they were all barking at them. I mean, they could clearly see them, and they were barking at them and terrified, scared. So we actually ended up coming home early. And as soon as we got home, our youngest Pomeranian, he's DJ, he just started, he peed on himself and he was shaking. He was just terrified, you know, and that's really kind of was the major driver to reaching out to you. I mean, even though we were also being tormented, it's a whole nother thing to see a helpless animal be tormented.
Oh.
I saw those Ring camera, but I saw those Ring camera videos. Jen forwarded them to me. She sent them through text, and it's so crazy because you don't normally see stuff like that, you know? So I'd like sort of like mixed feelings about it, because there's this part of me that's like, I have two sides. Maybe this is my Libra side, because there's one side of me that's like, okay, they're tormenting the dogs and the dogs are tormenting them. And then there's this other side that's like, okay, well, they're playing. You know, there's these guides or these spirit guides or these angels that are there playing with the animals, and they're just kind of walking around. I don't know which one it is.
No,
but I remember her. Yeah, I remember her showing me. I remember her showing me the videos, and I was like, "Wow, you don't normally see dogs just chasing orbs around the house," you know?
No. The thing is that I remember that situation, and Jen, you really had a full house there. I think I worked on it for a full day, which for me is quite long. I think that was a 10-hour stint, actually. You had entities, you had poltergeist energy, you had a negative vortex, you had, God, what else did you have? I can't even remember.
You had the freeway of doom.
A freeway of doom, and you had that freaky, like, ghost of a man in the corner of your living room. Do you remember that? We had to get him out of the corner.
I do.
Yeah, and then as we pulled him out, something fell to the ground. That was very alarming, wasn't it? Do you remember that?
Yeah,
a painting came down or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
So
had a
started,
whole batch. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I did. It was very intense. So how it started, we moved into this house. The house had been vacant for several years. So the previous owners, their daughter passed away, and they moved out of town to take care of her children. So they left the house because the house was paid off. They had lived there 60 years. So when they left the house, unattended, it was just kind of like an invitation for the squatters of spirits to come in. And we weren't aware that the house had been vacant that long until after we bought it and started talking to the neighbors and that sort of thing. So it started with just like the TV turning on and the toilet flushing at the same time, and cabinet doors opening and other doors opening or closing, furniture relocating, things like that, like very poltergeist type activity. So I was starting to get to a point where I was so afraid to be in my own home, and that's never a good feeling. And I wouldn't say I'm pretty sensitive to spiritual energy, and I could tell that what was there was not good. But I needed to be validated because I felt like I was going crazy. So I called Heather to the rescue, and we had some pretty intense conversations. It was amazing what you did. So I want you to talk a little bit about how, because you did this all remotely. How do you remote into a location that you've never been to and get in touch with these spirits?
So first things first, I take the address. I may ask for photos. I'll have a conversation. I'll read a lot of the energy of the house actually through the owner initially. So then we'll set up a time to work. I'll go into meditation, and in the meditation, I'll kind of basically just travel right into the space, and I will be hit by certain fields, let's say, and I'll get an indication. Oh, this is what we're dealing with. This is what we're dealing with. Then I may use a pendulum or muscle testing to test out. Are we dealing with entities? Are we dealing with poltergeists? Are we dealing with a curse? Are we dealing with neighbors' energy? Is that coming in? Are we dealing with a curse on the whole street? Are we dealing, karmic issues? And there's a whole array. And so by the end of that, sort of 45 minutes, something like that, I'm very clear about what the arena is. And then I start clearing. So I start pulling stuff out of the house. And with you, I think I worked a good hour and a half until I had to admit that I needed to FaceTime you. And we did a video, and that's when I got a visual of the entity, of the ghost in the corner of the living room. So every job is different. I'm just kind of on my toes, kind of, sometimes I'll need another conversation or whatever it is. And so that's how it works.
Yeah, I remember she called me one day and she was like in her car and I was like, what's going on? And she's like, oh, there's stuff happening in my house and I'm just chilling out in my car. She didn't want to go back in.
Yeah, I sat outside for like 3 hours before I went back in and played the Ram Dass chant on repeat. I mean, it was really stressful. And that last night, actually, my husband was out of town, of course. This kind of shit always happens whenever he's not around and I'm by myself. And I couldn't sleep and the dogs were growling. So they're all on the bed with me and they're looking at the door and they're, and then the doors, we had a double door to our bedroom and then the doors swing open. And I was like, all right, I've had enough of this shit. So then I came into my power and like a crazy person, I'm just like talking to them. I'm like, this is my fucking house. It's time for you to leave. I'm sick of this. I'm trying to sleep.
Come at me, bro.
Yeah.
But then you had those amazing gongs, right? Which were also helpful because any kind of sound vibration is super helpful. Even if it's just a couple of angel tuning forks or a Tibetan singing bowl or anything like that, or clapping even. And music, of course, is very helpful.
Yeah, I did notice music was helpful.
She was throwing jabs, and then when the sun gong came in there, she started pile driving these spirits, and they were just like, "Hey, okay, we shouldn't be here,"
Well, sorry.
Go ahead.
How did we do with that? That all got kind of concluded?
No, actually I called you again.
Oh, that's
so
right.
It concluded for a while. I mean, it was good for about 6 months. And the gong really helped. Actually, the gong was Eric's, and he lent it to me to help kind of keep everything at bay.
To
and it did
the
help.
spirits.
Yeah, it really did help. I mean, I was playing the angel tuning forks, playing the gong. We had bowls, burning sage. I was doing all the things, right? Had what's that saint?
Saint
Catholic
Germain?
saint. No, not Saint Germain.
Santa Claus?
The Catholic saint that gets rid of demons.
It's
I'm
either
not Catholic. I don't remember.
Is it
Saint Michael?
Archangel Michael?
Yes, Archangel Michael.
Gabriel?
Thank you. Yes, Archangel Michael. Yeah, so I had that prayer in every single room of the house, somewhere in a drawer or whatever, and that seemed to really help. But what it did was it pushed the spirits outside. So then they weren't coming in the house anymore, which was wonderful. But then they started playing games outside, and we had one actually turn on the sink. We had an outdoor kitchen area and turned on the sink and flooded our backyard. So, so when that happened, I actually called you back and you were like, oh yeah, they're hanging out outside, put some crystals out there, play the tuning forks outside. And then it really did help. So one of the things that was going on with this house, and Eric and I had a long discussion about this on another podcast about the energy vortex and how you explained it, that it was spinning the opposite way. So what is it? Neither of us had ever heard of like a negative energy vortex. I've always heard of energy vortexes being positive. So
no, yes, it can happen when there's an intersection of bad things that have happened to the land that kind of collide with each other, and the energy gets trapped. I was just clearing a house the other day where there was a negative vortex within, a third of a mile from the house. And that obviously had to do with, not obviously, but that ended up being about, it was karmic, it was Native American. That's how old that was. And so, in certain, like there was also a murder on another house I was clearing, and that created a mini negative vortex. So yeah, it's as simple as that.
And I believe that. I lived in Orange County for a long time when I was younger, and there used to be this place that was in the mountains. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, called Black Star Canyon. And there's a lot of lore surrounding it. It's actually in the hills up above. I want to say like Laguna, like not Laguna, but like Irvine. Okay. And apparently in Orange County, a large stretch of the land in Orange County once belonged to the Native Americans. And there have been reported of a lot of different sort of crusades and a lot of wars that happened on that land. And this place called Black Star Canyon, the lore behind it, of course, I was a lot younger. I was like 18 or 19. We used to drive to this place because they said it was haunted with the spirits of these Native Americans. Now, I wouldn't do that now, but it totally makes sense because that land definitely has that sort of history,
Yeah, I actually did a little bit of research because I thought that too. I didn't really know. I mean, I'm from Texas, so I didn't really know a lot about Orange County's history. And when this was happening with my house, and after I talked to Heather, I looked on the Costa Mesa site, and apparently there was a river that ran through the area where my subdivision was, and the farmers rerouted the river to get rid of the Indians. And on the website, it kind of is worded like this: there were Indians here, and then there weren't. So it's like, well, where the hell did they go? And obviously, they left out the part that there was the massacre. So I was not surprised to read that.
Hey, you know what? If all else fails, Jen, you just leave a plate out with some cookies and kombucha and see what happens. Or even a slice of pizza. Who doesn't like? If you don't like, saying no to pizza is like saying no to fun, right? So if the spirits don't eat it, then they don't like fun.
I don't really do pizza. I'm not
you
really
like
a pizza lady. No,
okay,
not
well
really.
then just do the Twinkies and cookies then. You might make it work. So I wanted to ask you, Heather, because we were talking about energy clearing, and a lot of people that are in the spiritual community, they have some form of that, and a lot of people are just familiar with the whole rubbing sage around the house. What are some ways that people can clear the home outside of just using regular sage?
Okay, so you've got your basics, right, which are sage, but also, I just did this whole little piece on Instagram about incense. For me, is the world of incense is changing a lot, and it's very powerful too. So you use it much the same way as sage. Like I said, any kind of sound vibration is good. The angel tuning forks are great. Excuse me, I've got something in my throat that needs clearing, literally.
It needs cookies.
Yes, it needs cookies, exactly. Let me just take a... Okay, so there are other things that you can do. There are joyful things you can do, like having a dance party clears energy. Moving figure eights with your arms and your body all through the apartment or the house. And then I would also think about some clearing meditations. There's one that I really love to do, which is if you stand at the side of the room and you close your eyes and you imagine that there's a big opening in the center of the room, and that opening goes down into the middle of the earth. And then you're taking a nice breath, and you can do this with other people. This is a really nice group one to do. It really helps enhance the powerfulness of it. And all of you would stand around the outskirts of this ring. And this ring would be about maybe 3 or 4 feet wide. And then you open your eyes, and you would basically just with your arms start to reach up, and in the areas that you feel are stagnated, you would literally pull the energy like taffy, and you would pull it into the circle, and you would drop it into the circle. That is one way with a moving meditation that you can clear energy, and I really like that one. I use it a lot. You can also use it in your third eye as well if you're not at home. If you are traveling, very often I will be like, or used to be on a plane, and I would think about my hotel room, and I would do that exercise in the plane before I got to the room. The other version that you can do is you can ask the walls to suck in anything that the space doesn't need.
Oh, I love that.
Those are all great tips. Yeah.
Yeah, those are all really, really great tips. Somebody
once
told me
visualizing the hole in the center of the room and the negative energy going to the core.
Yeah. So I try and do like energy clearing in my home all the time, for obviously any lingering sort of energy, because we're going back and forth all the time, but just to also freshen up the space. Somebody told me that a lot of spirits, if there are any, like to hang out in the corners. Is that true?
Yes, energy gets pushed into corners of rooms. That's why you always want to do the corners of each room when you clear, and the door frames and the window frames.
Yeah. And that was something that you taught me that I always forgot about, was doing the doors and the windows. But in my own house, that is exactly what happened. We had an antique, like carved screen from Sri Lanka, and it was in the corner, and it's about 200 pounds. I mean, it's very, very heavy. And we kind of had the corner blocked off with it. And that negative entity went and was hiding behind it. And then I learned something else new from you, was that those negative entities can transmutate into something else. So whenever I went to move the screen, because you said, okay, go over there, move the screen and light a candle. And there was a big spider there. So that energy transmutated into a spider and was still on the wall. And he hung out there all night. So it was pretty interesting.
Like one thing that I notice about like people that experience spiritual activity is some can go their entire lives without ever experiencing anything like it, and then some it seems to happen, just like with Jen. And I have my own thoughts about why that sort of gravitates towards Jen, but I also know a lot of people that have experienced it throughout their lives. Do you think that there's an affinity that some of these spirits have to people that are maybe aware that these spirits exist? Like, do they gravitate more towards people that might reciprocate some level of like reciprocity with them?
I don't think so. I honestly don't. I think it could be a number of different reasons why they're in this space of sensitive people, but I think they're probably in the space of not very sensitive people too, and they don't get noticed. So I'm not sure about that, honestly. Yeah. What do you think? What do you think, Eric?
I mean, I guess I can just kind of go off of my own experience. I think I read a lot of books about, especially just in the New Age and metaphysics. And that's one thing that comes into the field a lot, which is afterlife studies, near-death experiences, life after death, fourth dimensional sort of entities. And I've always been sort of sensitive to them growing up. So it was something that I've always been very sensitive to. So at one point you can say, okay, well, maybe it's because there's an empathic quality to a human being that's able to pick up on subtle energies in the environment. And I don't know that would exactly equate to me being sensitive to spirits, but if we're talking energetics, it would make sense that if they are there, that I'd be able to pick it up. And then there are some people that maybe I think that's my question, is like, okay, because you're aware of them, do they do do they act out? Do they act out? Do they try and make their presence known as a way to either, one, try and communicate with you because they want to pass a message? Because you hear that a lot too, and I imagine that does happen very often. But I'm just wondering if it comes down to you noticing them.
Yeah, that's interesting. It could very well be. It's interesting. I didn't spend too much time because I'm so actively clearing, thinking about how they're interacting so much. But I am aware, when I've worked on people who have contact with alien energy, that the alien energy seems very, very specific to target certain personalities, certain people who are open in that field. And so when they access those people in order to get information, that's a specific choice they make.
Yeah. She said the magic words, Jen.
I know,
and
she
if you
said
say the
alien
magic
and your
words
ears perked up. You're
on
like,
the podcast.
aliens?
What was it? Wait, what? I was like, wait.
He was trying to think of a way to work aliens into this podcast.
Remember when you used to watch Pee-wee when you were like 10 years old, and they had like the word of the day, and then when somebody says that, like the robot, and everybody was just like, yeah. That's kind of how I felt. I mean, not that we have to go down that direction, but if we're going to talk about aliens, we're going to talk about aliens, because I feel like there's a lot of truth to what you're saying, which is, if you read Barbara Messiniak's Bringers of the Dawn, those are channeled messages of Pleiadians that intentionally reached out to a human being in order to give them some sort of message. So I imagine that you work a lot with that type of energy. And do you see, in your clearing experience, especially now, do you see a lot more alien activity? I do see a lot of alien activity, and not only alien, like different forms. Like, it's so congested. I don't even know the names to most of what I'm picking up, really. But I'm not anti-alien at all.
there are some circumstances I really feel like there needs to be a clearing of alien and human, that it's really not serving the human. But I don't feel negatively. I don't think they have bad purpose for us.
Yeah. Maybe it comes down to, maybe there are just some human beings that don't want to like heed the call of aliens, and so they want to clear them from their space. But if the aliens knocked on my door and they're like, "What's up?" I'd be like, "What's up?" And then we both say, "What's up?" And then we would go and save the world together, you know?
But I had an alien experience about, how many years ago was it now? About 20 years ago, actually, where I had been hanging out with a friend of mine, and it had been a very hot summer evening, and this friend was going through some work issues and not knowing whether or not to leave her job. And I went to bed that night, and my windows were open, and suddenly I wake up. I'm kind of like in this, I'm not dreaming, but I'm not fully awake, and these two energy figures come and they stand at the bottom of my bed, and they elongate, and they make this kind of sound. And I look up, and they say, and they give me information to share with this friend of mine about her work, something really banal like that. And I'm like, let me go back to sleep. And they were like, get up. And they were like, they wanted me to get up to email her this kind of ridiculous information. I just didn't think it was important. And they were like, get up. And they were and finally I did get kind of freaked out. So I got up and I went to the living room and I emailed my friend. So I just got visited by these aliens, and I guess you need to do ... And then they went, well, before I got up, they just went kind of collapsed, and they just went, and they kind of went out the window again. And of course I woke up and had no memory of this at all until my friend rang me and said, she was really, really freaked out.
So what information did they give you to tell her? And
was it really ridiculous. It was so, I mean, I think it was useful to her. I don't know. There must have been, maybe she was also psychic too. So she might have been drawing in a connection with them. I don't know why they came to me, but maybe that was part of my alien initiation, you know?
We're going to figure out what kind of alien this is right now, Jen, just based off of its behavior. It couldn't be an Arcturian. No. I don't think it was a Pleiadian. Well, no. I mean, it maybe if it was anything, it may be like an avian, or maybe like even like a reptilian.
Wow, you're an expert.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I was thinking reptilian. That was the first thing that came to mind.
Yeah, only a reptilian is going to wake you up in the middle of the night and ask you to work.
Yes, very long faces and long mouths and very like, I mean, like really like, yes, lizard-like.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That was a reptilian for sure.
Reptilian.
When you said they made that noise, which is Jen's favorite sound, by the way.
Oh, I hate that sound.
And that's how I knew it was a reptilian. And you know what, Jen? The reptilians have been trying to communicate with you for quite some time, and you've just been like, nope, because you stop right at the sound, you know?
Yeah, I do. So what other kind of alien energy have you experienced? And has it been in home clearings or attached to people? I mean,
no, I don't know. I don't know the specific kinds. Again, I'm like this simple little lady that clears energy. I don't go into much like figuring out who's who, but there are, but a lot of women, and it seems like they're vastly intelligent people, and it seems like they're very open to the other side, but they keep them up a lot at night. Like this seems to be like they can't sleep. They know that something's attached to their auric field, and
that totally makes sense. It makes sense because we have dreams a lot about aliens, and if that activity is happening at between the hours of 11 and 7 a.m., that's where they're doing their business. So just to kind of moving in the direction of the clearing that you do, a lot of people have a reluctance to even just even the idea of some sort of spirit and wandering spirit in their space. And I know it's triggering for some people, maybe not for us because this is just in the fixture of what we do. But do you think that people have like a legitimate sort of fear of some type of psychic attack in their home? Is that something that's from your experience kind of common, where it's like maybe they'll start to feel that sort of like hair stand up on the back of their neck, and they're having to go and basically to call it like a psychic attack, right? Do you see that a lot?
I see the fear of it, if that's what you're asking me. I see owners of spaces being super scared about that. But I also see a shift in that we're starting to talk about this stuff much more easily, don't you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't think it's like 20 years ago or 15 years ago where it was really unusual to discuss these things. And even, I grew up in London, and my friends are super grounded, but even like they're talking all about this stuff too, which I never thought would happen,
Yeah. Seems to be this like recursion of more new age themes. And we have a lot of episodes about this even when it comes to things like modern medicine. A lot of people are turning away from modern medicine and turning more towards holistic sort of ways of living. And that kind of branches even outside of health, that branches into spirituality as well. Like, just like you said, like there's so much more of a community now, at least from my experience, because I've been in this for a long time, more now than there ever has been before. And I think it's because people are, turning away from a lot of these institutionalized sort of forms of spirituality and wanting to venture into these unknown territories. And so it's nice that we can have conversations about it. And I think that's the reason why this podcast exists, because there's a platform for people that are curious about it. So that's why we wanted to bring you on, because energy clearing is something that you don't even have to be super into, spiritual themes or new age. I even know that my mother, for example, has sage. And even if it's just a practical tool for her, it's something that she does to clear her space, So I think there's a conversation, an ongoing conversation that's happening, and people are starting to pick up these sort of like old sacred practices as a way to clear out their home,
Yeah. And I kind of wanted to rewind a little bit and make a comment on something that you said earlier that I found really interesting when you were clearing my home, is that I was becoming obsessed with wanting to know what was there and why it was there and tell me the story. And, I wanted all the details, and you're like, yeah, I don't really do that. I don't really care about that. You want them to leave, and that's what I'm here to do, to make them leave, And I thought that was really interesting because I just wanted to know all the details. So, can you just talk a little bit about why you don't get into the details with them? Why it's all kind of surface?
It's very simple, Jen. I just don't have the time. I have to go in there, and I think it would take a lot of meditation. It would take a lot of channeling. I don't particularly want to channel in that way with that kind of system. I just want to move it out. So I'm not one to kind of encourage long conversations in that arena. I'm not sure it's particularly healthy. I think we get very attached to the story of what's happening, and, it can shift in a second, so let's let it go.
That's true. I imagine it's like, I mentioned something similar to like what people go through when it comes to astral projection, because there are some people that like love to go into astral projection and visit all the different dimensions and talk to different discarnate spirits and things like that. And there are some people that don't. And the main reason that they have is the energetics of it. Like, it can be very exhausting, to have to subject yourself to all these different energies, especially I imagine the energy that you're dealing with, because if the goal is to remove them from the space, they're probably not spirits you want to hang out with for long periods of time. Do you know what I mean?
And something that part of my fear was that I was unaware of my own power. So, and I'm sure that people that are listening to this episode that are maybe dealing with this or have dealt with it in the past, they may feel like the spirit realm is more powerful than they are. But through all this different research and actually questions that I even asked you, you told me something, and I can't remember because it's been a couple of years now, but you basically said, you are the one with the power. They are not as powerful as you are. And the more anxious you're getting and the more triggered you're getting, you're kind of inviting it. So you're manifesting more of that same type of energy. So in your own words, I know I didn't do a great job of explaining that, but in your own words, what can a person do that is really struggling with that to kind of move on?
I think, that's super interesting. And as you were talking, there was another aspect of this that I wanted to bring up. But yes, you are more powerful for sure. But one of the things that may be easier to help anyone that's really nervous about letting this go is, first of all, to understand that. But secondly, things get released with love more than fear, right? We can release anything we like with love. So whenever we're working on this, and I know I'm joking about saying, get rid of this or get rid of that, but really, it's really just energy that's stuck and reacting in its own time sphere, and we need to just help release it. And so try and just take a breath, put your hand on your heart, just feel your feet, feel your legs, get really super grounded, and just understand, okay, you're going to have to get into a space of power and love. And those two things together are super empowering.
Yeah. And it totally makes sense, because you can even integrate that in as a personal practice. There's a lot of people that go through things like panic attacks and having to deal with their own fear about just life, and I think the realest part when it comes to dealing, I imagine, with these spirits is the fear that you feel for them, and what comes up. I imagine there's a lot of these sort of mythical sort of like symbols and visuals that come into your mind whenever you think of something negative. And those are the things that usually drive the ship of fear, and drive people away from even interacting with them. But I think you're absolutely right, at least from what I've read, which is like, we have to understand that like all these forces all essentially belong to the same God, just on various different frequencies in different dimensions. So I think like practicing that sort of awareness of unconditional love is what allows you to overcome and transcend that fear that people think. And I know that's easier said than done, because when somebody feels fear in their body, it feels very real, and what you're talking about, like putting your hand on your heart, doing those breathing exercises and realizing that you have that power, has the ability to sort of help mitigate that,
Right. And ask for help, really ask for help. If somebody feels very dangerous, you can stay in a love space, but, take care of yourself. These things are real. So.
Yeah. And we were talking about like animals too. And this is my experience, and I've read it other ways too. It's like, if you maybe aren't one of those people that wants to walk around with Palo Santos in your home, like every Thursday or whatever, like get a cat or a dog, because I feel like my cat does an exceptional job in keeping my place pretty clear. I mean, I think there's a reason why the Egyptians used to have little monuments of cats in front of their homes,
Yes, actually, one of the, Mm-hmm. Sorry, Jen. I was just going to say, one of the things that I tell a lot of clients to do with their animals, dogs too, is to give them the job of clearing the space. And, dogs don't get that as quickly as cats do, but they understand what it is to clear space.
So what is the difference when you're talking to dogs and cats? What are their personalities like?
Well, it's a cliche, but you can't tell a cat anything. They know everything already, you have to really negotiate. You have to really negotiate, because they have wisdom beyond everything, and they'll let you know that. And dogs are much more, human, it's like, it's not, let's not get into who's brighter of the bunch, but there we go.
It's interesting. Like sometimes, I believe you when it comes to the cat. Sometimes I'll be looking at my cat from across the room, and she's looking at me, and she's like, "You better be careful, because I'm going to clean you out of here too."
That's right.
They have a really serious job to do, and you can tell, because sometimes I see the animals like looking at things that aren't there in the room, and it could be, I imagine, like a spirit. And for the most part, I feel like any sort of activity that happens in my sort of domain is more benevolent. But I noticed that cats see things. You know, they see things that we don't normally see. They're attached to this other dimension that we can't see. And I always feel that sense of protection when I'm around my cat, you know?
That's right, Eric. And so what would be good is for you to ask your cat if it needs to be cleared, and then let your cat tell you if it needs to be cleared. Because sometimes she'll say yes, and other times she'll clearly say, don't worry about it, I did it already, or whatever.
Yeah. She'd be like, we can do this, but you got to feed me afterwards. That's the deal that we make.
She's the boss for sure.
You know, no treats. You got to get that, you know, that real feline kibble out there. Mm-hmm. And then she'll make it happen.
Yeah, we just recently got a cat, and he is he's very superior, so he'll look down on you like you're a peasant. He's just he's very regal, but he's also really funny. He has a very funny way about him.
Somebody actually told me that, like, this is just more trivial. I'm not sure if this is true or not, but the way that cats think is that in their mind, they allow you to be a part of their lives, which is, in their mind, they feel as though they could take you out of this world really quick, and they make the decision to keep you around, likely because you feed them and also because you've built a relationship with them. But that, I always thought that was just really funny, because I think that, and then I look down at my cat and I'm like, no, come on. We make the decision together. We're both in this together, you know?
You have the honor of being the house that your cat resides in, but yeah. Yeah.
She has her like her little staff, and she's like, I allow you to be here. You may stay. But Jen's cat's beautiful. Like Jen's, she has this, what was it? I forget the name of the cat. What's the type of cat it was? A Maine Coon.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Lovely. Yes. Very, very, very independent cats.
Yes. Yeah. He's very much like a dog, but very independent. Yeah, absolutely.
And they do generally know how gorgeous they are.
Oh, he definitely knows. Yeah.
But they've got a magic to them. Yeah, that's very profound. You could channel with your cat easily, Jen.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah, sure. Also, watch out for them.
What are some ways that people that have dogs or cats, just from the very beginning, from the very start, they're looking at their cat right now and they're like, I want to talk to you. What are just some practical ways that you could like begin that contact with your animal as far as communication?
So it literally begins with a willingness to put your brain aside and to sit down and say, I'm going to explore this as an option. I'm going to just see if I can hear, feel what's happening here. And always, always tell the animal, look, we're about to have a conversation, so help me out here. And your animal may just tell you to, piss off. I don't know. But
but that'll even be profound. That'll be profound too, because you can go to your pal next door and be like, hey, my cat just told me to piss off. And they're like, what? And you're like, no, he actually said that.
It's too funny.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. And it's really powerful because it's true. We can't approach it with the same sort of understanding that we do with the English language. It's almost like in order to really interact with them, you got to leave all of those belief systems, put them to the side and just really be open. Just like Jen said, as far as her mediumship, I imagine it's approached the same way. You got to just have an open mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Heather, it has been a pleasure. I think you're wonderful. And
thank you
I love
so much.
everything about you. You've helped me so much. You kept me from burning my house down because I was definitely ready to do that. I was like, we got to burn this thing down or move. I don't know, but I'm not staying here. So thank you for all of your work and everything that you do. You're amazing. And for everything that you did for Sancho as well. He is very grateful. And I could hear him. He was kind of walking around outside of the door. So I'm sure he was coming to say hi. So, and maybe he already did. I don't know. But
All right. Thank you
Thank you
both.
so
Thank you
much.
for
It was
sharing.
fun.
Yeah, thank you for sharing space with us. And you're just like a wealth of knowledge and information. And we're really, really grateful to have had your energy in the space with us today. We've had a lot of, the last few episodes have been about our animals, and it did provide me a lot of clarity as to kind of go about my journey with the animal that I have. And especially during this time in COVID, there's a lot of people spending more time with their animals. So I think it's a worthy conversation to have about how people can connect more with their animal friends.
Oh, and speaking of, sorry, I have one more question. And this is something that Eric and I were talking about offline, was how are the animals going to do when everyone goes back to work? Because everyone has been working from home for the past year. So are you starting to feel like a little bit of anxiety from animals? What's coming through for you?
Yes, for sure. For sure I am. So, you're just going to have to start talking to them about what's happening much sooner. Give them a lot of notice. If you're having to go out of the house when you normally wouldn't, give them a ton of notice. If you're going on a trip, take out the suitcases way in advance, like 4 days in advance. I'm not kidding. Like we need to just give their central nervous system some help by extra padding with time and information.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go like, hey, Binks, I'm going to go back to work on May 29th. I'm going to set the alarm for 7:30. So if I get up before you, we got to arrange that because I don't want to be in the shower and get in your way, just that whole conversation.
Just one last final thing is, if you work with the images, put the images of you leaving in the palm of your hand and put the palm of your hand on your animal and let them absorb that, but then see them having a good time. Yeah.
Oh, that's really nice. Yeah, we've definitely noticed. I actually had to travel for work yesterday, and I brought my suitcase out, and the dogs got in it, so they didn't want me to leave, and packed my suitcase, left, and Jeremy took a picture of them, all of them. The cat and all 3 dogs were waiting at the door. Because I haven't left in so long, and they were just by themselves with Jeremy. It broke my heart. I was like, I'm so sorry, guys. And as soon as I closed the door, they started crying, and it just broke my heart. So,
well, don't forget you can communicate long distance too. So, just keep up the conversations.
You know what I heard that they have now? They actually have these animal collars that you could wear, where you could actually call into this collar. And when you speak, you can hear your voice on this collar. So your animal gets to hear your voice and you can actually talk to your animal.
Oh,
isn't that cool?
That is cool.
Yeah, I just heard about it. So
oh my God, I love that.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah. So thank you again, Heather.
Thank you guys.
And have this thing going.
How do people get in touch with you if someone wants to book a session with you for animal healing, home healing?
It's my name. It's heathermccall.com. That's MCCALL.
Perfect.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And any social media handles you wanna let us know about? Instagram, YouTube, anything like that?
Heather McCall Sessions is my Instagram. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you guys want to clear out your home, you want to get the vibes going in your home, call Heather. She knows exactly what to do. You want to maintain that connection with your animal, give her a call.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much again, Heather. Thank you guys for tuning in, Divine Nobodies podcast. It's been a wild ride. It's nice to be able to just wax poetic about these subjects because we love our animals and continue loving your animals, taking care of your animals, listening to your animals. If you guys are looking for us on social media, you can find us on Instagram at Divine Nobodies Podcast. And then we're also on YouTube if you want to check out the video portion of the podcast. We'll have Heather McCall on this as well. Go ahead and check it out. Like and subscribe. Do all the things. Until next time, namaste, friends.
Namaste, friends.